think we're gonna go ahead and start the meeting in a couple minutes.
Have a seat.
The first item.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and call the meeting to order. We can start with the roll call, please.
Stephanie Sutton. Bob Ackerman. Thomas Hawkins. James Blythe. Sophia Corrigetto. Jason Hurst. Joshua Ney.
Here.
Tina Certain.
Agenda. Okay, yeah, so the next item, approval of minutes.
Yeah. You move it. I second.
You're gonna vote on
All in favor?
that. Aye.
It's adopted.
Okay. Next, we will move to approval of minutes, which I was told we don't have, so we will vote on those at the next meeting. And then, Juan, can you please read the announcement into the record?
Section 30-3.3 of the Land Development Code establishes the Plan Board, including its membership, rules of procedures, and functions, powers, and duties. The Plan Board is advisory to the City Commission on most planning petitions. Appeals of Plan Board decisions concerning special use permits are to a hearing officer within 30 calendar days of the decision. See Section 30-3.58C of the Land Development Code. The procedure of an appeal is set forth in Section 30-3.58.
Okay, next we'll move to public comment on general items, not on our agenda this evening. And I have a card here for, Robert. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I just have one, for Robert Bounce.
Good evening. Well, I don't know how many of you tuned in to the City Commission's workshop Tuesday, but it's pretty clear that the Commission's not listening to the Plan Board recommendation that there be a separate category of neighborhood residential zoning, but targeted in areas of the city where it's appropriate, or listening for that matter to the African American members on the Commission, who both said they were going to vote no on this proposal. At the end of the session, where estimates run anywhere from between 75 to 100 people appeared, mostly in opposition, except for a handful of property managers. They wanted to do away with the occupancy limit and sell more rooms. Most everybody in the room was opposed to this proposal. Certainly not listening to them. There is one concession. David Arreola said he would like to see a 2-story limit. That's one step in the right direction. But Poe, Hay Santos, Sacco, and who was the fourth one? Hay Santos and Arreola and Sacco and Poe all said that we're ready to vote for it. And Poe said he was going to schedule it for the necessary ordinance hearings in July, well before the election, and certainly well before the next commission comes into office. I've left with the planner there a copy of my comments to the Plan Board, which focused on consistency with the comp plan, pointing out numerous areas which they ignored, which are not consistent with the comp plan. You can read those. I won't go over them tonight. But then you have online today or yesterday, Mayor Poe's op-ed, which will be in Sunday's issues section, again trying to seize the high moral ground, talking about Jim Crow and racism and how single-family zoning is all tied up with that. negating the fact that the people that really want this are those that build things and out-of-town landlords and property managers, developers. No, developer's not a bad word. But in my old neighborhood, University Park, that's the people that wants to have the occupancy limit removed. And an old 5-bedroom house, I get it. It was built for a family. Good part of that neighborhood was built for families. Turn it over to a property manager, it becomes a dormitory. That's their problem. You know, this whole thing about extracting wealth benefits those people. And I want to take you back to Gary Gordon's wonderful comment in 2018 in November when we were talking about GNV Rise.
Just keep in mind you're almost at time.
I'm sorry, I guess I ran over. But he said, shame on you for cloaking this proposal in the language of the civil rights movement when it's anything but that.
Thank you. Is there anyone else for public comment?
Thank you, Plan Board members. And as you may know, I too spoke at the City Commission workshop with 50 or 60 people who all spoke against proposals, supporting things that you said. And unfortunately, it seems that the City Commission was not presented your votes or your recommendations and certainly chose not to reinforce them through their actions. I'm tired of being here. I'm sure you're tired of being here, and it's I don't know. I just watched the January 6th hearing and watched the Justice Department consider retiring en masse, and I wonder what we should be doing as a city and what you should be doing if you're not going to be listened to. So I urge you to vote no against everything tonight, because we're in a place where, as Bob and others have said, the goal is obviously to just drive as many people into the area near the university as possible. Statistics and data are unreconciled, let's say, in terms of what's needed, what's known, and everyone who is involved, except for 4 commissioners, virtually everyone, believes that this is a bad path to go on. In particular, tonight, I think you're going to look at upzoning a non-contiguous part of the city to become a transect, or to set up a situation where that can happen. And I would like to remind you, I know a few of you have a passing familiarity, or perhaps more, with new urbanism, which is the driving force behind the city's work at this point, as Mr. Ackerman and I discussed at another venue recently. New urbanism isn't a buffet. It's a very complicated, integrated system. And when you pick and choose bits of it, it's inconsistent with what new urbanism is. This is the SMART code, which, if you've read, it seems that it's not being followed. And if you follow new urbanism, you also know that people who invented it, like Andres Duani, are tinkering with it all the time because they realize that it's having unintended consequences. So with regard to this evening, and if we can get for 1 minute the overhead, is there a person here today? In the back, wherever they go?
Both people
Maybe
turn
not.
on the overhead.
I just want to remind you that new urbanism is based on the concept of a transect, and a transect goes from lower density to higher density based on this diagram, or this concept. And if you pull a chunk out of here and put it over here, you're not following the new urban system. So I urge you to go back to the drawing board, reconsider transects, map what you have here, and consider how that would work in Gainesville, because Gainesville has not developed like a traditional city, and trying to pick pieces of it apart and apply them where you feel like will not suit new urbanism goals, and it does not make a better city. Thank you, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is public comment. My name is Khalid Blount. I was going to just observe, but I have to make comment. You do not explain the housing pattern that we have the varying variations of condition, the variations of level of service, all the things that this city needs to stop being in terms of being two different Gainesvilles without looking at bias, racial steering, redlining, and discrimination. And I don't intend to be without history. My amnesia has been cured, so I'm not forgetting history. And there are specific patterns that need to be superimposed on what we have to start bringing about a change. And there are ways to regulate against those bad effects. As the previous speaker said, there's constantly tweaking the new urbanism. There are ways to think about regulating against the bad effects that you're fearing. You can seek to preserve historical housing. That is, if somebody tears down good housing, whatever its age, in order to put up something high profit, high density, ugly and undesirable, you can do something to make those kind of transformations heavier. Make a $50,000 transformation fee, do something to make those undesirable. The idea is that we must achieve mixed income housing wherever possible. That means infill in prosperous neighborhoods with workforce housing and infill in at-risk neighborhoods, in economically precarious neighborhoods with market rate housing. That's happening at Homewood on one hand, but the other hand that must be reciprocal is workforce housing in prosperous areas. Why should a single mother scrubbing floors in hell have to take hours of buses in the morning and her kids not have access to the good schools her employer's kids go to? Why do we have a segment of town that's like servants' quarters and it's a food desert and the transportation stops early? It's almost a Broadway plot of what a town that slipped back in time would look like. And history does matter. So, things like you have tonight, like your first item of new business, I call the coffee amendment. Has anybody considered what the consequences of that will be around town other than the 12-story tower to look at from Depot Park that we fought for so hard? And now you want to have beautiful views for the people that have the top flight units in that building. But what an ugly addition for the park. It is disturbing to see particular individual interests able to insert such changes into our public agenda.
Thank you.
Good evening, Plan Board. City Commission was interesting. As we know, many people were basically ignored. What I'd like to talk about is something important. I think since the focus of the city is some kind of new progressive thing, why don't we host a workshop? Why don't you suggest a citywide workshop on new urbanism? Let's really hear about what it is, because we know it's not what we've got, and it's not what's being planned. So I think something on new urbanism would be a super idea, because it's wonderful. It really has good concepts. It doesn't have mushrooms coming up everywhere like we have all over this community. I also would like to have a win-win balance. I feel as though it's like a have and a have-nots, winners and losers, and it doesn't need to be that way. If people came down to reasonable planning standards, instead of pushing RCON on everybody, RCON 12 units per acre, I worked it out, 12 units per acre times four possible bedrooms, that's 96 people on an acre in somebody's neighborhood. With absolutely zero lot lines, you can't get a car behind it. I mean, I've read the plans and I thought, this is a joke. If a student wrote that as a paper, they'd get a D. Because look at it, you're going to have only 2 cars in the front, but there's really nowhere to park them. Then you're going to have 5 foot on the sides, but all the cars have to park in the rear. Now, how are they going to get there? I mean, it's like, it's the whole thing, it doesn't fit. It doesn't fall together. So it needs to go back to the planning board, back to zero, with the ideas of new urbanism and other really good planning concepts. So it is a win-win for all of us. I mean, none of us are totally opposed to anything. I was insulted if I was a black person about Archon being imposed on everybody because it was equity. Why is giving someone Archon zoning at 12 units per acre equity? We should be bringing up people who have to live in those conditions, letting them have better planning, better everything, not going down to that. We should be coming up, raising everybody up in this community. So I'm very upset. I think we need balance, we need a win-win, we need an approach where everybody has a buy-in. And I think starting with your administration would be a good idea. Does that mean I'm over 39 minutes over?
Oh, you have about 30 seconds left.
Ooh, okay, good, okay. Let's see, what else? I looked at the maps. The other thing is anything else with implications. It's all very nice to approve like a 12-story here in the middle of a lovely park, but that's not appropriate. It has a tremendous lifelong impact for all of us to have a piece of like downtown Atlanta stuck in a park or next to a park. It's not appropriate. Somehow we don't really consider, in this community, we don't truly consider balance, compatibility, beauty. Quality of construction is out the window in many instances. So it'd be nice to say, what is our vision? There isn't one. We have a lovely park and no vision because we're going to stick like a multi-story building in the middle of it. It could all be low level, 2 or 3 stories developments all the way around with affordable housing. It would be lovely if it was. So anyway, I still have time, boy. Okay.
You're actually at time.
I'm over time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you for, please think about balance and win-win and not win-lose. Thank you so much.
Is there anyone else for general public comment for items not on the agenda?
Hi, Melanie Barr. So we're to speak right now on subjects that are not going to be discussed. So what I would like to say is that the Plan Board and the City Commission are rushing pell-mell to get these severe changes done to the comprehensive plan. And there's a lot of people that want to participate, and they're traveling. It's the summer. People are gone for weeks or months. What is the rush? Jane has discovered that none of this has to be done right away. There's time to listen to everyone, but since you have to be here in person now, people can't participate that want to, and that have valued insights. So I'm asking for you to continue, listen to discussion. It's on the agenda, you're going to hear it, but to continue till the fall, and the City Commission, I'm going to ask that too, to continue to the fall so everybody can weigh in. You're imposing things on people who live here and want to have their say, but they literally can't because they're out of town. And these trips are planned in advance. People didn't really think about what's going to happen, and now everything's happening in June and July and probably August, and people may not be here and they want to weigh in. So I'm asking you to not vote on anything that is of great significance to the comprehensive plan, to zoning, planning, anything. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Tana Silva. I missed the first part because I was in a conversation with a neighbor, and it was about real things. People dying, people in prison, all of that is just every day in my neighborhood. And so this isn't y'all's fault, but I want to scream when I read things like Lauren Poe wrote in the Gainesville Sun about racist segregation zoning. When people are making profit off of my neighborhood, off of Fifth Avenue, Porters, and sending people across I-75 to the east side displaced, and not touching the real issues. So when I hear him going on about racist Jim Crow zoning, all of that, I can hardly stand it. You know, come spend a conversation or two with my neighbors and find out what's really going on, what the real problems are. But no, they're off in this theoretical cloud that, if you're a homeowner, you're racist if you or this, that, or the other. You're racist. We've been called, oh, you're just an old white person. Ridiculous, insulting, rude things. We're anti-housing. If we're just trying to stop the kinds of exploitation that are going on with this rezoning of stuff that is coming directly in past years from small-scale developers, from big-scale developers and their representatives directly. So, the city has 2 ADUs per property now. Just stop there. That's plenty. The rest is just exploitation, and it doesn't serve the interest of real people in their homes. And to make it all about market rate rentals is going the wrong direction. None of the reports that are listed for all of this, rezoning even mention the Schönberg and Florida Housing Coalition data specific to Gainesville and the recommendations from 2018 and 2019 that preserving the existing housing stock is number 1 most urgent problem in the city. And the commission has done nothing in 5 years about any of that. Lauren Poe said in 2017, oh, Gainesville has an overabundance of affordable housing. The problem is it's in the wrong place. Anyway, I'm sorry if I get a little emotional, but honestly, this is just, it's so dishonest, the whole way that the city commission's gone about this. And they've put the pressure on you, and they put the pressure on staff and the other advisory boards.
Thank you.
To promote their propaganda. Thank you.
Are there any other comments for items not on the agenda that we'll be discussing tonight?
Hello, my name is Hansel Garcia. I just want to give some quick perspective for the rest of the population that may not normally be represented in these sort of meetings. I 100% support the idea that we should have increased housing in general throughout Gainesville, and often that means that we're going to have higher density. There is no way we're going to continue to have continuous sprawl, and creating a more car-dependent city just doesn't make any sense. Looking towards the urban report that was done on Gainesville, most housing throughout the city is a drain on the city finances, outside of what we're talking about downtown and central areas where we have high density and where we can provide, local services, providing water services, policing, fire services. It's a lot more affordable when you have multiple units in one area and you don't have to travel miles and miles to provide these services. Also providing, just basic service to the people. Everything's a lot better when you have higher density, at least more affordable and such, which is what we need. And I think this plan that's been put forth in, Mr. Castillo, as well as the mayor and the council, it's all been, I think, has a lot of foresight. Gainesville needs to grow. It continues to grow, and regardless of what many people might say, that students don't count, or I'm personally, I used to be a student. I'm a homeowner here in Gainesville. I decided to stay. I like the city, but we need to address the fact of the people that do live here. Even if some say it's like, oh, they're transient, because Gainesville does have a transient issue, because obviously we have students that come in and out. But we still need to serve those people, and we need to create increase in stock. It's a simple question of supply and demand, right? What I would say as a caveat to most of the stuff is that when we do provide additional high density housing, and we add additional contracts to build additional housing, it only works if we have competition. We can only lower rental prices, and we can only lower housing prices if we actually have people that can compete for those prices. So if all these different new buildings are run by the Colliers Corporation, they're not exactly going to be competing against their existing companies. So they're not going to be bidding down the prices. So even though we do need to increase the stock across the city for all of our properties, the market system only functions when there actually is real competition. I do appreciate all your time and all the souls that have worked on all these projects and the development of Gainesville. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any other folks?
I just have a question. My name is Maria Jones, and I was just talking to this gentleman here, and we were, my question is, what happens when you can develop by right, and what happens once the development has been developed and issues arise in the neighborhood? Like, for instance, no proper entrance, traffic that was obviously forecasted by the neighbors because they lived there, but that the city did not take any of this into account. What recourses are there once it's built? A development by right that has not been properly planned. You know, are there recourses, or are you just, okay, too bad? That was one thing. The next thing is, you know, a quality of life is important. Not necessarily everything needs to be bigger and better. And right now, I think that if all of us that live in Gainesville, we realize that this is a pretty darn good town to live in. But it's not going to be that way whether or not we build a multiple family units or towers or whatever if we increase the population by a whole lot. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public? If not, we can move on to old business.
Madam Chair, I have two comments.
Sure.
Sorry. One, it's not practical for us to suspend all the business of the city because somebody's out of town. I'm planning to go to Italy in November. It would be nice if they would do nothing while I'm gone. But that's not exactly the way this works. So there's 130,000 people here, and some of them are in town. So the city continues to function 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and so do we. On the issue of enforcement, that's probably going to be a code enforcement issue. Mr. Persons, I assume if something is built that doesn't meet the requirements, then code enforcement would be the procedure for fixing that.
After it's built?
I'm sorry, I can't.
After? Oh, you can't comment on me? I had a question. After it's built?
Yeah, I understand. If it's after it's built, code enforcement is going to be the appropriate department to deal with issues that you believe are not meeting specifications. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Member Surden?
Thank you. Good to be here with you all and not have a conflict. And I am, for the public to know, I'm Tina Surden. I'm a non-voting member just here for the school board. And as I understand, my purpose here is to be in the know if there's residential housing that would impact school capacity. It has to go through concurrency and things of that nature. So I'm here, and this particular zoning change could, in theory, have a impact on schools, but I doubt it because I think the housing that would be built in those areas is not directed at people with school-aged children. So I'm gonna get on my soapbox since I have more than 3 minutes. Other than that, but just to share a little perspective, and I think for the citizens that live in that area, I grew up on Northwest 6th Place and 12th Street. It's a cul-de-sac. We called it Crosstown. It's called Seminary Lane in the area there. So where the Seminary Lane apartments are to the south of 6th Place, they kind of circled around where I grew up. And the 6th Place was a little lane there. There was a street there. And kind of now I think there's a few older houses that were there when I grew up. And that big building is now back there. They bought the land. There was a little lane that separated, I think maybe 12th Terrace or something of that nature from 13th Street. Just for perspective. So I played in the area. Was raised by my maternal grandmother, and she lived there. She said she moved in the area, I think in 1962 is when she moved there. And I often ask why we lived there. Our neighborhood was African American, people of great pride, working people, working class people. And she says this is where we had to live. This is where we had to live. She worked at the university for a number of years, as did some of my other relatives and people in our neighborhood. We knew people that lived in Porters because we went to church with them. And I asked, how did they kind of get there? Because at that time, Porter's had, it used to be kind of riotous, a lot of, there was a juke joint, as we called it, and there would oftentimes be issues, fights of some type from people that didn't live in the community. So the community, Porter's got a bad rep because of that particular establishment there. But my grandmother said they lived there because that's where they had to live. And so as time passed, we moved in 1981 out into the Duval Heights area. But a number of my grandmother's friends who still were living, and they were aged at that time there, and I said to several of them, don't sell your place here. This is really the last area that you can walk to University of Florida. I think it would be a good spot because your grandkids are getting up older and they can go to college and blah, 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 and they may go to UF, because I used to park at their house and ride my bike to campus. So there is a lot of consternation in our community, in the African-American community, that when the surrounding area did not want that particular piece of property, they let it gentrify. When crack hit, it hit that area very hard. Folks saw it as a divestment of resources by the city. They let it run down, and then of course outside developers come in and they start to buy and they develop. But that group of people, those folks are being displaced. And the housing, we do need housing, and we need, as he said there, to bring the housing, the prices down, you have to have more inventory so that you increase the supply. But who's the inventory for? The inventory is not for the existing residents or those who were even displaced. I remember when the Seminary Lane apartments were built. I think it was in 78 or somewhere around in there, 78, 79. I remember as a kid, we lived there, and I remember them being built. Several of my friends who lived on 7th Avenue in rental houses, their families moved into the ones that were closest to me on 6th Place, and some moved over by the water tank behind there. So when they were taken out, all of those people were displaced. They had to promise that those apartments would be rebuilt. The same happened with Kennedy homes over there. And I'm not saying it's the city's place to do that, but I just think that changes in our community are being made, and some are good changes, and some I don't think are not so good. And I think that we're doing things kowtowing to the benefit of the University of Florida and their population. And I think with this zoning change, what I see happening with McGuire going to be demolished, and they're not going to replace that, those families that are in McGuire now will have to have housing someplace. I mean, however many units in McGuire, I had a friend of mine that lived with her 2 girls there when I was at UF. I'm in McGuire, and so when you take McGuire out of the housing stock that's for merit housing, for family housing at UF, those residents are going to be out in the community, and they're going to need some place to stay. But I think the units that they're building, and they continue to build, the high-rise buildings, apartments where they're renting out by the bedroom, that is not going to fill that need for McGuire. And then the low income or the families that live in those areas in Porter's, Seminary Lane, Pleasant Street will continue to be squeezed by the student population, albeit, those who may have families. So I just think when we should listen to those, or you guys, as well as the commission, listen to the concerns and not be dismissive of those residents that are around it, because they have been. I drove by, and the apartments that sit between 7th Avenue and 8th Avenue, I just still can't believe that, because I knew people, I played up in that area as well. And along 7th Avenue, how Mr. Jesse Aaron's home was demolished, and a student rental apartment place was built there. So it's a big change for our community, and those lots that are there, the homes are older, the existing homes, and may get tied up in air property and all. And with this change in zoning, we could just end up changing the whole character and wiping out historical neighborhoods and a history of the people that were here. And they had to stay in those areas because of the redlining and the zoning and just the Jim Crow, the rules and the laws that were in place at that time. And those patterns still persist now. The citizen commented about having this type of housing spread out in the city, and perhaps that is something that we should look at. But it seems that the area that's being targeted are areas that where people of color live, and perhaps it's It's unfortunate that there's the proximity to UF, but I think they seem to be the ones who always get the short end of the stick, the black and brown and the poor people. So. Be absent and then come back.
Thank you. All right, I think now we'll move into old business.
I didn't have anything to say, Nancy, so I'm just trying to clear out your buttons.
Thank you.
Reading item 211227 for the record. Old business petition number LD 22-000041 TCH. City of Gainesville requests to amend the City of Gainesville Land Development Code to provide definition and regulations to the neighborhood scale multifamily use. And I will be doing that presentation for you this evening. Just share my screen. There we go. So good evening. For the record, my name is Juan Castillo. I'm a planner here with the City of Gainesville's Department of Sustainable Development. I'll be discussing with you an item that you, as the city plan board members, have directed us to bring back to you with amendments to previous recommendations. So we are here to discuss some of the amendments that we have done and are proposing. So the item in question is a definition of the new use of neighborhood scale multifamily development. Just a quick background on the item. This new use is a small scale multifamily development that is limited to 4 units per building with a minimum of 2 units per building. And it's designed to look like a large home, but house a maximum of 4 families within the home. Again, with a minor or with a small minimum of 2 families. And so at our last meeting, this item was before you, and you directed staff to amend a few of the text and to clarify others. So staff has gone ahead and incorporated some of the suggestions that you've mentioned on our last time here. One of the suggestions is to clarify language dealing with neighborhood character. As you can see, that language has been removed, and clarification now is a requirement of what this type of development needs to incorporate in order to comply with regulations. And those requirements include being a maximum of 2 stories. They would have a maximum of 2 primary entrances that would be allowed on the unit. 30% glazing is a requirement of the first floor, with 50% glazing on the upper floors. The front facade cannot exceed 20 horizontal feet without including at least one of the following elements, and that includes a window or door, an awning, canopy or marquee, an offset column, reveal, void, projection, etc., and complementary changes in the facade's material or texture. We've are still limiting off-street parking to 2 parking spots in front of the building between the right-of-way and the front facade, and any additional parking spaces are allowed to be located at the rear of the building. We are still requiring a minimum of 1 high-quality tree to be preserved associated with this development. If there is no high-quality tree present for preservation, then the development has to provide a quality tree and plant it on site. And we've added language to address the comment of building orientation. So the last language here, you can see we reference that the main entrance needs to be on the first floor and shall be part of the front facade of the building. And then the front facade of the building must be facing a street. Buildings must have an entrance on the first floor. However, entrances on the second floor may be located to the side or rear of the building. We looked at addressing language regulating the side facades of the building. However, staff has identified a few reasons why we did not pursue providing that language, and that includes primarily the comments from neighbors deal primarily with the externality of the front facade. They're not so much concerned with the side facades of this development. Second, a fence would be allowed on the side facades, which can negate any type of externalities associated with a side facade, and would also negate any type of design implementations of a side facade for the structure. And lastly, literature shows and other municipalities have demonstrated that this type of development has been curtailed as far as the ability to actually happen due to regulations, what they would consider excessive regulations. And so, given that the mitigations associated for this development can easily be incorporated with a side fence, we felt that this added language would not be advantageous or would help to undermine the ability for this development to occur. Everything else pretty much has stayed the same. As I mentioned, the building's maximum story is at 2, and the minimum units per this building is 2, with a maximum allowance of 4 units. And that's just, yeah. Anyways, but at this time, I'm concluding my presentation, and I'm open for any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Do any members of the board have a question?
I don't have any concerns about the side facade issue, except my impression was that we had talked specifically about corner lots and addressing side facades on corner lots, especially since the category for the required setbacks for this proposed category were like 5 feet for side setbacks. So we could have, for corner lots, we could have large facades abutting streets. Did you consider language that would address that scenario?
No, I mean, yes, but the similar situation occurs where a house built on a corner lot could, in theory, still put a fence on one of the side streets and therefore negate any type of design incorporation.
Are we talking about requiring fencing?
Not requiring fencing, but a fence is allowed. We would not regulate or not allow a fence to happen on a corner lot as long as the front of the building is established. We will still allow fencing to occur on the sides of the building.
Okay, so we're not requiring fencing, but you're saying we wouldn't care what the facade looked like because they might build a fence?
Correct. Like the side facades, we just, again, that any type of design element would be mitigated by the potential inclusion of a fence.
Okay. A second question that I have, and I know I've brought this up a couple of times, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I really want to wrap my head around it. We currently have in the code a definition of something called small-scale multifamily that's defined as development with 6 units per building. And it defines the number of units per building the same way that we define the number of buildings in neighborhood scale multifamily. And I know that staff has looked at projects that were multifamily structures that had dozens or hundreds of units and said that they were small scale multifamily because they were multiple buildings inside of a single building. How are we going to avoid that in this circumstance?
So the definitions to this particular structure, it's a new definition. This is specific to neighborhood residential scale, the potential neighborhood residential zoning, and it specifically defines the building to only allow for 4 units.
That's exactly what the small scale multifamily does. So my concern is, let's say somebody proposes a building that's 12 units, and you say, oh no, it needs to be small, it needs to be neighborhood scale multifamily, that's only 4 units per building. And the response is, oh well, this is 3 buildings. How are we gonna right? And I know that sounds bonkers, but that's the way we're currently doing our.
So the definition currently says 1 building, 1 structure.
Exactly, but so does the definition for small scale multifamily. I don't want to put you on the spot, Andrew, but how can we, we're using the same language for neighborhood scale multifamily that we use for small scale multifamily. And small scale multifamily could refer to a 6-unit portion of a building that's got 100 units in it. How are we going to make sure that we don't get the same outcome with neighborhood scale multifamily?
I would say I don't see that happening, because I don't think that the two things are analogous. I would say that if it would make if it would help, in terms of making more comfortable with that. I mean, you could include a requirement or a part of the definition that it would be, within the exterior walls. The 4 units would be in exterior walls, which would help, I think, further clarify that. That would be my recommendation.
So say that again, units within exterior walls?
Right, it would be essentially a 2 to 4 unit building, and the 4 units would be contained within those exterior walls.
Okay. Thank you. And I totally respect your opinion, but also I would never have thought we would have permitted 100-unit buildings where the code requires small-scale multifamily, but I know that we do. Right? It's like, I agree with you. It doesn't seem like that would happen, but it's absolutely the way we're doing things now. I had 2 more thoughts. One was, I can't recall, I know we don't have our minutes ready yet. I can't recall the motion that we made last time in where we were specifically were on parking. Did we ask for all parking to be placed in the side or rear? And did staff determine that wasn't feasible or wasn't desirable? Or am I misremembering? Did we not specify what we wanted on parking? I honestly can't remember.
You did request for all parking to be either on the side or the rear. One of the reasons why we're still allowing parking in the front is because if this building is designed to look like one of the houses within a neighborhood, houses consistently have a parking driveway allowed on the roads, and so it would be discontinuous to see a building not have that driveway, or at least a couple of driveways, to be consistent with that kind of look. And so in this case, we're allowing for at least a maximum of 2 parking driveways in front of the house, in order to be consistent with the existing driveways within a neighborhood. And then any excessive or any other driveways, parking spots that are associated with the development can be behind the building, so that it's not.
So could we have more than 2 driveways, like 2 driveways for parking in the front, and then a 3rd driveway to access the rear?
No.
I was thinking 2 parking spaces would be a single driveway that had enough square footage for 2 motor vehicles.
So they have a maximum of 2 in the front. And I see your point. I guess we can add language to limit that, to have one of those, if they have a parking in the rear, to have one of those entrances be an entrance to the parking in the rear. But the idea is to have 2 curb cuts, if you will, that would allow for parking. And I guess to further clarify that point, 1 curb cut would allow 1 parking in the front. If the development wants to provide 2 parkings in the front, they can do so. But if one of the curb cut is leading people to park in the rear, then that would be the purpose of that curb cut.
Okay. And then the last thing was, I know we pulled the architectural compatibility language that's here from the Transect guidelines, and those were written for commercial buildings. and I don't know how well they match. Like, one of the standards that jumps out to me is that we would need some articulation in the facade every 20 feet, but we're allowing lots that are 35 feet wide. So we could have structures that are, I mean, it's reasonable to expect that we'd be permitting structures like this. So it's, other uses is 35 feet wide. We could have a quadruplex on a 35-foot wide lot. There might only be one or two identifying features in the front facade, like maybe one window or one door. But you would still have at least one per every 20 feet on the facade. The standards that we apply regularly that seem to get us good results are the standards that we apply in the historic districts, which are the Secretary of Interior standards, which are not, the standards aren't written in a way to say this is how you build an historic house. They're written in such a way so that you can evaluate a proposed structure for context. And I'm not an expert on them. I'm not an expert on the historic preservation review or the Secretary of Interior standards, but it seems like we get really good results with them in the historic districts, including for new construction. Did we look at that as a model for architectural compatibility for neighborhood scale multifamily, and have we had input from Ms. Kaufman or Ms. Selah, the architects on staff?
No, not at this moment.
On both, or? Okay. Okay. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Do any other members have any questions for our staff? Or I guess from there we go to public comment?
Yes, ask for public comment.
Okay. Do any members of the public wish to speak on this item?
Okay, so you're showing what you're calling a four-family home. So we're going to assume that since it's families, they're going to have 2 or 3 bedrooms in each unit. So we're going to have the 2 parents. Each parent is going to have a car. Maybe there'll be a teenager with a car. So right away, you're going to probably need 12 parking places. Some can park in front of the building. Some are going to have to park in the back. Since the setbacks are only going to be 5 feet, how do you propose to get the car in the back? And also, everything's going to be paved. What happened to our green city, our tree city? So everybody gets one token tree, and then it's all covered with a building or with paving. Where does the water go when it rains? I think we're going to have flooding issues, and people are going to start to park in the street as well. But if each 4-family home has 12 cars associated with it, the parking in the street's going to run out real quickly. And I know people say, oh, get rid of your car and bicycle. But if these are put in single-family neighborhoods that are not near downtown, people are very unlikely to be bicycling in 93-degree heat. I feel like this is the wrong thing, especially for a single-family neighborhood. Too big a building and no parking and no way to even get to the back if the setbacks are 5 feet on each side. If there's a wall, how does the car get back there? So that doesn't even make sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else like to speak on this item?
Robert Mounts. The only thing positive about this revision is the 2-story limit. And as Melanie Barr alluded to, we're not talking about families living there. We know that. I've had years of experience in a university neighborhood where these units wouldn't be occupied by families. They're not family housing. You know, it's hypocrisy. And I would kind of like to know, as to the general whole subject of the plan board's recommendation 4-2 last month, why didn't the staff brief the city commission on the plan board's recommendations to date? Or did they give them a paper on the side the public didn't see? What was their recommendation about it? They say, yes, good compromise, you know, to create residential neighborhood as a category, but then not map it as Member Hawkins said, and use it in areas where it's appropriate, targeted areas, like transect zones, that sort of thing. Don't you have an obligation to inform the commission fully what the public's reaction was to that and what your recommendation was? I didn't hear it.
Thank you.
Ms. Silva, I also have that same concern. I don't think staff brought that up. I'm not sure. Maybe I missed it, but I don't think, I mean, we even talked about it at the last plan board meeting, that, you know, the city commission was just gonna blow past all your recommendations anyway. But that the, you know, I was concerned about that second recommendation of, you know, not mapping it, of having a category that already it's a slippery slope, but having that category, but not mapping it. And I don't remember that that was presented to the city commission during the workshop on Tuesday. And I wasn't sure if this was fit with the compatibility petition, but apparently not. I think it is, as Thomas raised the question about the historic districts, that consultant's report says that historic district standards and aesthetics, setbacks, and trees also as part of setbacks, and leaving only one tree are impediments to development. And, you know, what's left? You know, I mean, if you're just going to get rid of all those values that I believe are in the current comp plan, then, you know, what's the point? Just let people build whatever they want to anywhere and call it in the name of affordability because it's cheaper for the developer. So I had a conversation with a member of the Historic Preservation Board, email exchange, and I don't think they're aware that the consultant is saying, you know, to do away with some of the historic district standards. And that's a real concern. And we're already seeing a lot of demolitions getting approved. And although Kathleen is trying to really hold the line about implementing the historic district standards in Pleasant Street and the other districts too. So that is a concern. And the setbacks are, you know, that's just a recipe for getting rid of yards and trees altogether. And the idea of leaving one high quality tree. I mean, what, this big around or what? So anyway, I do have concern about whether staff even brought that up to the commission on Tuesday.
Thank you.
I just wanted to point out, because one of the questions that I had
I'm
was.
so sorry to interrupt you. I have a light. I think it's from staff. One.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I would like to address that concern from our citizens, whether we presented before the commission any kind of public feedback that was brought up by the City Plan Board. At the special meeting with the commission, one of the agenda items was that to bring up those comments that were addressed here before you. Associated with that agenda item was a backup that detailed all of the comments that were made here as part of the backup, which still is readily accessible to the public. The commission at that meeting recognized the agenda item, and they addressed that they were aware that that was part of the backup and that they had access to it, but did not feel the need to bring staff forward to provide a presentation. Staff, however, was fully prepared to provide a presentation concerning that agenda item. But the commission was made aware of your comments, and they have the backup as it's available to the public for anybody who would like to see them as well.
And the planning board recommendation was in the agenda item. The actions that you guys have taken on the first two, the land use and zoning piece, as well as the occupancy limit. And it's same thing, we're gonna pull your recommendation forward on these remaining petitions as well.
I have a brief comment. None of the proposals we have before us right now affect the regulation of historic districts, regardless of what
That's
has been recommended.
right. That's correct. I did want to point that out. That was in the a line in the report from HRNA when they did their analysis. However, staff did not feel that that was A, fleshed out in the report. It was just a single line, and B, that's not in any of the recommendations or any of the discussions. So.
Thank you, and sorry to interrupt.
No, it had to do with, you know, the parking of the cars. I mean, when I came here earlier, I was discussing, okay, because what I've read, it seems like you don't have a car, period. And I think it's been emphasized by Mr. Ney that, yeah, that we need to, you know, pretty much get used to the fact that we will not be able to have cars. So if this is planned on the fact that, you know, in reality, there are only going to be 2 cars per 4 apartments, that's fine. But if we are consistent with being, you know, in the United States, I would say that at least 4 cars per quadruplex would be the norm. And I still, even 4 cars, I have a hard time figuring out how you're going to park them. And obviously riding a bicycle is really nice right now because there are a lot of trees. But I don't know what's going to happen if we extrapolate this and we say, okay, we're getting so many people here in Gainesville now because it's so inexpensive. Housing here is so inexpensive. But yeah, people are not going to ride their bikes, I don't think, if there are no trees. It's just food for thought.
Thank you.
Okay. In terms of fairness and compatibility, why 4 units? Why not just 2? I mean, why are we always giving it away? You can have it as high as you want and as big as you want. And the other thing is, how does one keep out SRO, single room occupancy? I mean, somehow this has to be designed so it's not student rentals. Because that is not helping affordable housing or anybody that we're trying to help in this, which I think we're supposed to be helping people who need a home, who want a family. So the design doesn't allow for a yard, doesn't really allow for a family. It basically is designed as a student rental. With this, and we have unlimited number of bedrooms per unit, which are not defined. It should be defined. And the other thing is, it's so crowded you can't get in the back to park. I looked into that. I mean, how wide does it have to be to park? Can you get through 5 feet next to a building? Would that work? I don't think so. I mean, I haven't tried it, but so I mean, how does one design to prevent SROs so that it's made for families? Why crowd families? Why not have 2 units instead of 4? I think the setback should be compatible with the current existing housing stock, which means you're not thoroughly crowding out and filling up a whole lot. You're basically making something that looks nice, that will fill in attractively, and maybe really be useful for a family, where they really can park a car and have a place and have trees and maybe a garden or whatever they need to have. So I think the plan is just bigger, give them more, and I'm opposed to that. I think it needs to be a structure that's to scale with what's available and something that is livable and nice for a family, not for students. I mean, I know you're not supposed to zone them out, but there has to be some design standards you can set up to prevent more and more student rentals. So setbacks are important to me. So, and also number of beds needs to be limited, number of bedrooms. We haven't even got to that part yet. So, and not used by right. I forgot to add that. That's very important. Not used by right in any of the neighborhoods. Ours doesn't allow renting for a start, okay, over a period of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to comment?
Good evening, Julie Beatty. I want to just make a few comments on some things that don't seem to ever be considered. And one of the things is the infrastructure. I understand that there's a real problem. If you put multifamily in and you have 4 units, you are adding stress to the water system and to the wastewater system. If you enlarge the building on the lot and you narrow the lot lines, driveways and that, you are adding, in addition to what's been said before about the traffic and the parking in the streets, you're putting a load on the water, wastewater infrastructure. I had a friend that noticed a leak, a water pipe leaking, I think up here on First Street. And when she was talking to the workers, and they said, oh yeah, they'd report it. She called to make sure it was reported. And Public Works told her, oh, we know about that. It's been on the list for 2 months. And that there is such a backlog of problems with the water system because of all the building. So I think that we tend to make decisions in a vacuum, and there's so many different areas that these decisions impact. And that doesn't seem to be taken into consideration when you start allowing fourplexes in single-family neighborhoods that are in existence, have the infrastructure there, and wasn't designed for all this extra load. So I'm against doing this at this time. I would also reiterate and thank the people that spoke before me. They've all made good points. I won't go over them again. But I really hope you take this into consideration. We can't just make decisions on what we think will happen. There's a lot of things to consider, and I haven't heard them considered. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a question. Looking at this, my name is Greg Searles. I live in Copeland Hills, down off of South Main. That area that I live in is all septic. So if someone were, and we have a few lots left in that neighborhood, and I think Kirkwood, there's a lot of people that were here the other day from Kirkwood. That is also, I believe, septic. So when you have a septic system with no sewage in the whole area there, how are we going to get around that issue? Is that going to be it's just not going to be able to build there, you know? I just wondered about that. And again, the cars issue, and as we fill in the inner city, I just think it's unbelievable that you would think it's for a family, someone's going to have a car. So you got 4 cars in that lot, and I had a lot of teenagers. I had 4 cars in my driveway, 5 cars. It was expensive, but they all went their different directions. I don't know how you could have 4 cars in something like this if they're side by side, when you start building these side by side to build in. And I know it's not going to happen overnight. None of this is going to just all of a sudden happen overnight. The other thing is the market conditions. I don't know how this is going to be. It's going to find its own level. No matter how much you put in there, there's so many people moving to Florida. The rents are still going to go up. And no matter how much infilling we're going to do, and the people that want to really live in Gainesville aren't going to be the people that this lady grew up with. They're going to be maybe forced out of, the old folks out of their home. Someone's going to buy that property, demolish the home, and put up a bigger unit. So I'm just really concerned that we're doing this too fast. The other thing is that why did we have to do all the districts? Why couldn't we just say, I live in District 1. Why can't we say, well, District 1's going to be our guinea pig? But we're just going to do the whole city at the same time. It just doesn't make sense to me that you'd go this far reaching and not have some kind of safety net to say, hey, that didn't work in District 1 this way. Let's get it District 2 changed this way, or 3 or 4. So that's a couple of my comments. But I really am concerned about the septic system, so if anybody can address that.
Thank you. I guess we can bring it back to the board for any other questions, discussion, or motion.
I can address the
Sure.
septic.
Well, let's ask, assuming you're on septics and you're putting a big building there, I'm assuming if they don't have the ability to do it, they can't put the building
Not gonna
in.
have a drain field.
That's correct. So current regulations, require that a development that's considered multifamily connect to sewer. They don't have the option to have septic systems. So if the septic system is the only option there, they will not be available.
So unless there's central sewer for a lot of this stuff, they're not gonna have it.
Correct.
So that protects Kirkwood and Cokewood. That'd be a lot of people would be very happy that was entering this meeting the other day because they were really upset because they were, not in my backyard. But, so that's out then.
Right, they would be required
In your
to.
opinion, that's out right now.
Get sewer.
Yeah, they get
Yeah, they get sewer.
Okay.
I have just a comment. I just like to affirm that one of the issues with this is that, we keep talking about, tomorrow when we approve this, Kirkwood will be bulldozed away and there will be nothing but quadruplexes. This is gonna be the slowest incremental change. It's gonna be ones and twos over years. It really is just trying to unravel some things that started in the 50s, and it is going to be incremental. I mean, people aren't going to knock down existing homes to build a quadruplex. They will probably build them on vacant lots. Obviously, if something happens to a house, they may replace it with a quadruplex. But, if you're going to go around any of these places, this is not going to happen on a regular basis.
Member Hawkins?
We changed the code in 2017.
For ADUs?
No, for the form-based districts and
Yes.
repealing the overlays. And the development pattern is radically different in the Innovation Square area, on University Avenue, on 13th Street, in the Seminary Lane neighborhood, what Member Sherton described in the Porter's community. I mean, to suggest that we won't see changes,
I
and
didn't say that.
that's 5 years, and it's like, it's radically different. And I think a lot of the changes are good. Some of them I really strongly don't like, but we will see radical changes. And you're right, it won't be tomorrow, but 3 years, 4 years, it's not. I do not think there'll be a long timeline on when people start taking advantage of stuff. Just based on experience.
The city's mostly built out. That means we're gonna be bulldozing residences to build a quadruplex?
And that's what's happening in Porters and Seminary Lane. I mean, that's absolutely happening in town neighborhoods today.
Well,
Right? I mean, that it is, it's just a fact.
by Tuesday, everything will be gone.
Yeah, that's not my suggestion, but I also don't think it's correct to say that it won't happen in the foreseeable future. I mean,
I think it's gonna be
the
slow and
timeline
incremental.
the timeline for people to plan projects is a few years, and that's when stuff will happen.
Staff has a light?
Yeah, I don't know if it'll be helpful or not, but I did want to say, so a lot of the areas I think that were, Member Hawkins is talking about, University, 13th Street, those areas have been high density, multifamily for long before the code was adopted. Porter's zoning did not change. The development that's happening in Porter's is the same zoning that
But
was there
didn't match the
prior
Trad
to-
City overlay that previously existed.
Right, but it's
We
the
changed
same.
the zoning in that neighborhood.
Well, no, we didn't. Residential multifamily 5 has been in Porter's for longer than I've been at the city, at least for 25 years.
But the overlay used to limit what development happened, and it no longer does. The zoning in our in-town neighborhoods, the transect zoning is not the only zoning that changed. The removal of the overlays changed the zoning for all the in-town neighborhoods.
Okay.
And I'm not suggesting that's a bad thing, but we need to acknowledge that that's
I just wanted
true.
to clarify that sometimes timing of when things get built has nothing to do with the city taking action. And in the case of a lot of the developments, like the Standard, which was a planned development zoning, had nothing to do with the transect zoning. The hub on Northwest 13th Street, also a planned development zoning that had been long in process, long before the zoning changed. The hub on University Avenue, the other building, that was built under UMU2 zoning, again, prior to the zoning change. So I just want to be careful that we don't make overgeneralizations.
Those are all fair examples.
Well, and I would add, I recently was talking to former Commissioner Nielsen, and I don't know how long it's been since he was on the commission, but they added a great deal of density down 13th Street, down University, and the transect zones did not really change that. I think what you're looking at is some incremental stuff that was done 20 years ago is finally coming to fruition. And I suspect the same thing's going to happen with this. But anyway, that's, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, so my initial thoughts are just like concerned that the commissioners, at least a couple, are definitely like completely unaware of the recommendations we made last time. So it just kind of makes me feel like, I don't know. I mean, we're making recommendations, but, you know, it wasn't discussed last time. So I don't know if at this point, you know, what our vote is going to do to kind of change their minds. Just if you just watch their meeting for an hour on Tuesday. But I think for me, you know, I was comfortable with the whole vote we made last time, you know, this being its own zoning category, doing it where it's appropriate and not kind of making that initial radical change. It's not that I'm against it. I think it's just too soon. I'm just not comfortable with it as is proposed right now. But I'm also just wanted to like voice that concern that it seemed like the whole workshop happened and there was like not even 2 minutes of discussion about the idea of potentially creating this as its own zoning district, as we had spent hours discussing a couple weeks ago.
Well, you know, Madam Chair, everything we do to the commission is a recommendation that they can ignore, change, do whatever they want.
They should also receive it.
They did receive it.
Yeah.
Did you tell me they did receive it?
He said that they did.
Yeah. No, they did, but it doesn't mean they read it. You know.
Yeah, we provide it. We can't make them.
Of course.
Right.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I'm assuming we need to make a vote on this, and if there's any motions or.
Well, somebody would like to make a motion.
No, I'm gonna. Did you?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were going to.
Well, I put the light because I'm willing to, but I'd much rather hear from folks you haven't heard from yet. I want to know what y'all want to do so I can make a motion that passes. That's what I want. I think everybody knows what I want to do because I talk too much.
I'm actually fine with these changes, and I feel like this, as we talked about, the commission's going to do what they want. So I think we should just vote on it and go. I'm ready to make a motion just to
Fine.
say yay or nay. Can I do that?
Just make
Yeah,
them.
we can do that.
Madam Chair, I move that the Plan Board approve petition LD 22-00041 TCH with staff recommendations.
Second. Mr. Hawkins.
Yeah, Mr. Hawkins.
Did member Sherman? No. Yeah.
Okay.
If you push that, you'll see which one is that.
Okay. Member Hawkins, you had your light?
I was going to defer to member
Sure.
Sherman. I have comments on the motion, but I'll save them.
Okay. Member Sturgis?
So I think, I didn't say it before the motion was on the floor, but there are some older neighborhoods that do have some lots and have some older homes. And I think possibly maybe considering having a narrow view of where this would go. Like I was sitting here like checking through my mind, like an area that is like kind of causing me some concern is over here, Azalea Trails, I think it's called, we call it Hollywood, Lincoln, the street from there, Waldo Road, Spring Hill, they have a lot of lots over there, and I just think putting, somebody coming and putting a dwelling with 4 units in it beside, when you got an area with single-family homes in it, is gonna be a bit disruptive and out of character. And I would worry about the parking and where it would be. It's gonna be a lot of on-street parking is what I can see happening. You know, once that structure goes up and they get that certificate of occupancy and they go in there, the city's gonna say they don't have enough codes enforcement staff to be going out there to be checking to make sure the streets are clear or that they're not parking in the front yard or they're doing all this stuff. So I think you kind of gotta look at it. It does create more density in theory, but you know, when folks bought in the zoning that there was in their area, that they didn't think that a unit would come up with 4 units next to them. You know, I don't know how much vacant land is in, you know, as we head out going west and opposite of University Park, like on the 16th Avenue and those corridors and 23rd Avenue. I don't know how many vacant lots are in those areas because they're starting to build in over there, but I think you got to look at the impact of that. So of what this change could do to some older neighborhoods, because there's areas where there's some larger lots and older homes that maybe folks may think it's more economical to just tear them down and to rebuild under this new zoning. So.
Thank you. Back to Member Hawkins, if you wanted to make a comment on the motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to ask the maker of the motion and the seconder if you'd be willing to make 3 modifications to the motion. One is in line B, to specify that buildings between 3 and 4 units are buildings with 3 or 4 units within the exterior walls. Second, in paragraph D, to add a requirement or a limitation that development have 1 driveway and no more than 1 driveway. And third, in paragraph C3, to specify that we're regulating street-facing facades, so that we would include a side facade on a corner lot. And I'd be happy to repeat those 3 changes for clarity, if that would be helpful. If the maker and the seconder concur.
Yeah,
I'm okay.
I'm okay with that. Do I have to say something now?
No, you good? Are they clear for the note taker?
Yeah, he was writing notes, unlike me.
Thank you.
So, are we?
Any other comments? Sorry.
Very good. So I guess we can go for a vote. We have the motion in a second.
Yep. Roll call.
Okay.
Roll call vote.
Sure.
Bob Eckerman,
Yes.
Thomas Hawkins,
Yes.
Sophia Corguero,
No.
Joshua Nay,
Yes.
Okay.
Passes
The
3-1.
motion passes 3-1. We'll move on to new business. If you can please read the next item to the agenda.
New business item number 211331, text change to the city's land development code to delete the 10-acre minimum parcel size requirement. Petition LD 22-000050 TCH, City Plan Board proposed text amendment to the land development code, section 30-3.14.J.4, rezoning criteria to delete the 10-acre minimum parcel size requirement for the owner of a parcel not adjacent to a transit zone to file an application for rezoning to transit. And I'll be making that presentation. For the record, my name is Juan Castillo, planner with the Department of Sustainable Development, presenting item number LD 22-000050 TCH. The item before you is a request to amend our land development code to amend language requiring a 10-acre minimum parcel size for the rezoning to transit zone. This, just to kind of give you a quick background on the item, this item came before you originally on March 25th of 2021. And at that meeting, the item was approved unanimously by this board. Then this item went to the commission on November 18th, 2021. At that time, the item was rescheduled to a special meeting, which occurred on February 22nd, 2022. And at that meeting, the item was approved on first reading with a 4-3 vote. This item came before the commission for the second reading on March 3rd of 2022, and it was denied with the recommendation that the item come back to the city plan board for further consideration with more public outreach. And this is what we are doing here today. We're bringing the item back to you for further consideration on the 10-acre amendment to eliminate the 10-acre requirement for transit zone rezoning. The request has not really changed from the last time this was before you. Language is still amending that requirement. Number 4, which says if not adjacent to an existing transit zone, the rezoning site shall comprise a minimum of 10 acres. Alongside the amendment to that language, we are proposing to add, which was again the same thing as this was before, language to further clarify what a transit zone does and is and what is appropriate to be developed within a transit zone. And so you see that language in blue before you right now. I can go into a little bit of detail on that if you will, but again, that has not changed since the last time this came before you. And that's it. With that, staff is recommending approval of the petition before you, and we're here and available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Do any members have any questions for staff? Okay. If not, we can move to public comment. I do have a card. Robert Mounts, I believe your name is up here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Robert Mounts again. This is spot zoning, pure and simple. We have transect zones. That's new urbanism. They're predominantly along the major thoroughfares, 13th Street, University Avenue, close to workplaces, transportation, all of those things. You know, when they sent it back, they said more public engagement. Well, this doesn't qualify. You know, I didn't even know this was going to be on the agenda. Wasn't planning to speak to it, but they denied the big building, the Stringfellow property, 5.5 acres, I think. They didn't quite deny this, but they sent it back to you. And I think the public could understand enlarging an existing transect zone. And maybe the answer is to say, in property adjacent to a transect zone where the city has grown, maybe that's where you allow a petition for a smaller piece of property. And maybe the 10-acre thing is arbitrary, I can see that, but to put anything smaller than that out in the middle somewhere to create a new transect zone is just a PUD on steroids. Don't do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tana Silva. The gist of this is about the same as the other proposals before you, and that's really to just disperse the zoning throughout the city. It's not doing anything about focusing development where it would be more appropriate along the existing areas of more higher density roads and so forth. But I have a real problem with this because it says here this was identified in 2019 at the Joint City Commission and Plan Board meeting. I was, tuned into that meeting, but they specifically remember that being on the list of priorities that you all identified. And I'm pretty sure the previous iteration that came before you was initiated by David Coffey along with the Stringfellow petitions. And so I think there's a little problem with your backup there. And as Robert Milne said, there's been zero public outreach. I mean, people didn't even know this was coming back up again after so many people showed up in February at the City Commission meeting. Let's see, the transect, the definition of transect is, stepping down the density and the intensity. And so this, just defies reason that there would be disparate transect zones disconnected from others. I did have a little question too. I saw that back in February, the Plan Board approved a couple of properties that were less than 10 acres to become transect zones. One was very small, I think it was 0.63 acres, and the other was 8-something acres that UF owns out on 441. And staff said, well, it's okay because they're just a half mile away from a transect zone. Well, I kind of is sort of bending the rules there, so I was a little concerned about that. So I think that this hasn't met the request that was made by the City Commission, which they should have just gotten rid of it in the first place, but it doesn't meet the request that was made to bring it for more public outreach and consideration. And it's another big step that needs more careful attention and not just random transect zones anywhere. Thank you.
Thank you.
Plan Board. Quite frankly, I was shocked to see this bounce back. I'd love to know where it came from and who brought it forward, because it was done with, totally done with, and now it's back. So that's really wrong, because we as citizens shouldn't be dragged back and forth for something. That means you can bring something up next week and change your minds, and next week and next week. That's just not how you run government. So I must say I'm very much opposed to this being discussed or being even voted on. I don't agree with the way we've done transect zones for a start, because John Barrow and a few of us were shocked when we realized all this great big high zoning all around 16th. Why? That's not a transect. Transects are supposed to be from downtown out, not a spot here and a spot there and a spot there. And we have spot zoning without a doubt all over this town, and this is a time to stop it. So if 10 acres is reasonable, giving the examples is totally inappropriate, because I could pick an example of anything. So I'm sorry. The examples and wording like successful and coexist harmoniously with surrounding developments. Now you tell me how a multi-story building overlooking a beautiful park is harmonious, successful, and around surrounding developments. We all know that certain people have bought a whole bunch of land along Depot and all in Porters, and they're just salivating to get this passed so they can just add it to their stock of student rentals and high-rises. I mean, somehow this has to stop. And the fact that it was dealt with before should not bring it up to this, should not be brought up again. This is not outreach. I went and found this out today, and you want to know how long, guess the page size of the handout for this. Anyone want to guess? 138 pages. So this is this is a massive document, and it was already negated, and I would like to ask every one of you to vote no and give a good reason. It's not harmonious. 10 acres is plenty. Next to a transect zone makes sense. So I'm very furious at having to see this again. I think it's really wrong. And this is a time for you where you can put your foot down and say no more. Things should not come back after a vote. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello again, Joe Beatty. In the interest of understanding whether we're all wasting our time now or not, Madam Chair, I respectfully request that you that you ask staff to show you what was provided to the City Commission from your June 6th meeting. That would be the City Commission at their June 21st meeting. I think that your recommendations in that, I can't find them anywhere in the backup, and I wish you would ask staff to show you where that, exactly what was provided to the city. I also think that they shouldn't be back for a second bite of the apple, and I also urge you to vote no. Thank you.
Thank you. And does anyone else wish to speak on this item? If not, we can bring it back to the board for discussion. Member Ackerman?
I just have a couple of responses. This is not, the proposal here is not for this to, this would still have to be contiguous with a transect zone. It just would not require an extension to be a minimum of 10 acres. If you discuss the 441, a little bit of leisure domain, but they basically put together enough property to equal 10 acres. They were multiple owners, but 10 acres. So, anyway.
That's not my understanding.
Member Hawkins?
My understanding is currently it can either be contiguous or be 10 acres. And the proposal is to not require either of those.
Just to further clarify, so Member Hawkins is correct. Currently, if property is contiguous to existing transect zone, it can be we can receive an application. The planning board can hear it. The commission can hear it, regardless of size. What's before you again is as Member Hawkins mentioned, if we have an application for transect zoning that is not contiguous to existing transect zoning, then it has to be, amongst other things, a minimum of 10 acres. That's what the current standard is. So that's what you're considering. I may have just said the same thing you said, but
I think so. Yeah. So we still have lots of criteria, but none of them are contiguity or size.
Mr. Castillo, could you put that slide back up that you just took down?
and I think maybe it would be helpful to clarify too. This is we don't have the same minimum size requirements for any other zoning district except for the sort of class of transect zonings that we have.
So the major change we're making based on that is not really anything except it's no longer has to be a 10-acre parcel.
Correct.
Madam Chair, go ahead.
No, you got it.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion. I move that the Plan Board approve petition LD 22-000050 TCH based on the backup that we received back in February and also what we have here today. Thank you.
Okay.
Seconded.
Do I say all those in favor? Does
I'm
one-
sorry?
All those in favor, does that?
Did we get a second?
There was
Okay.
a second. Okay.
You can call for a vote, or you can ask Mr. Castillo to do a roll call, whichever you prefer.
Okay,
Roll
I'll-
call. Okay, you're doing great. Bob Ackerman,
Yes.
Thomas Hawkins,
Yes.
Sofia Corguero,
no.
Joshua Nay.
Yes.
Vote passes with 3-1.
Thank you. Can you please read the next item into the agenda?
Item number 211332, Magnolia Park rezoning from planned development to general office. And that will be petition LD 22-00008 Gary Donson and Associates Incorporated on behalf of Steph and Holland Solutions LLC, requests to rezone the subject property from planned development to general office located at 4232 Northwest 6th Street, Gainesville, Florida, 32609. And I will be doing that presentation. For the record, my name is Juan Castillo, planner for the Department of Sustainable Development. I'll be presenting item number LD 22-00008 The item before you is a request for rezoning of property from planned development to general office. The property in question is located off of Northwest 6th Street and is in between Northwest 13, that triangular section between Northwest 13th Street and Northwest 6th Street. The property is currently improved with the Kids House Learning Center and preschool located on it. The property's size is about an acre and 1.08 acres. The property is, as I mentioned, I did not change that, but as I mentioned, the property is zone PD. The land use currently on the property is for office. The proposed zoning is for office, and I apologize, I see that on my presentation I did not change the lettering for the proposed zoning and current zoning, but the proposed zoning is for general office, which is supported by the existing land use of office on the property. As you can see, there is limited industrial over to the east, and the proposed office zoning would continue to be a buffer between the existing RSF1 zoning over to the west and the higher intensity use of limited industrial over to the east. This will also replace, obviously, the existing PD, which is an older PD, outdated, and will replace it with current regulations and standards associated with the general office zoning. The uses surrounded support the request before you, and staff has found that the rezoning request before you meets our rezoning criteria found in our land development code. With that, staff is recommending approval of the petition before you, and of course, I'm here and available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Does anyone on the board have any questions for staff? If not, we can open up for public comment if anyone here is interested in commenting on this item. Seeing none, we can move it back to the board for a motion or discussion.
Madam Chair.
Okay. Oh,
I'm sorry.
I don't know who was open for a second.
I move the planning board approve petition LD 22-8ZON.
there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
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 All opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Can you please read the next item into the record?
Sure. Item number 211230, petition LD 22-000043 TCH, City of Gainesville requests to amend the City of Gainesville Land Development Code to amend the bedroom limit within the University of Florida context zone. I'll be doing that presentation as well. As soon as I find it.
We're trying out a new efficiency technique in the office where we just have Juan do everything.
Do everything. On this week off.
That's
You
right.
really need to hire somebody else.
Just Juan and I running the halls.
For the record, my name is Juan Castillo, planner for the Department of Sustainable Development, bringing petition number LD 22-000043 TCH, which is a request to amend our land development code to amend the language regulating bedroom limit within the University of Florida context zone. So there are two proposals. This is fairly straightforward. The proposals before you, the first one is to amend the bedroom limit to, or excuse me, amend the multiplier of the bedroom limit within the University of Florida context zone. Currently, that multiplier is 2.75, and the proposal is to amend it to 3. The idea behind it, of course, is to allow for flexibility for more bedrooms to be permitted within the University of Florida context zone, which would again provide more housing opportunities for students and anybody. The second option would just to remove the bedroom limit altogether, which is detailed below the proposal, as you can see here. And that is pretty much it.
It's a long presentation.
It's a very long presentation. I am open and available for any questions you may have.
Member Hawkins?
I'm a hard no on this. I think that when we were considering single room occupancy development, we considered a lot of very detailed requirements for managing single room occupancy development, and we thought about it carefully. And if we do not have a bedroom multiplier, then any multifamily development could practically be single room occupancy. And I think that if we want to approve single room occupancy, we should use the definition for SROs and approve them how our code approves for SROs. If we want to have multifamily, we shouldn't have 7-bedroom units, 10-bedroom units. And that's, the market's going in that direction. More and more units are being added to multifamily designed for students. And I think some of the practical problems with that, in addition to all the things we thought about with SROs, are we're creating development products that cannot practically be used for different things as the market changes over time. Somebody comes in, builds this product, leases it up, sells it, moves on, and 15, 20 years down the road, we may have a structure in our community that reaches the age of practical obsolescence much sooner than it should because of the bedroom arrangement. And I think having a 2.75 bedroom multiplier is perfectly reasonable, judged based on the development we're getting around the university context area. It's obviously not a deterrent to the market. So those are my thoughts on this. I'm a hard no.
Thank you. We have a light from staff.
Thanks. You're doing a great job. I would just wanted to add a little. I don't know if it's helpful or not for the board's consideration, but I would say so. We've had the bedroom limit in place since 2017, and although I'm careful not to mix up circumstance for causation, but I will say since we've and just for some context, maybe we put the multiplier in place because prior to that, there was no link between units that we regulate for zoning and bedrooms. And so, as Member Hawkins mentioned, like we were getting a lot, and then we were seeing that trend in terms of like greater and greater bedrooms, per unit. And we felt like there was a little bit of a transparency issue between bedrooms and units. So we proposed and implemented the bedroom limit. Perhaps coincidentally, perhaps as a result, we have seen with newer developments a more reasonable mix, I'd say, of units. We actually see fewer of the the 4.4s and 5.5s, and the more exotic. We're seeing more of a normal mix now of like 3s, 2s, and 1s in studios. I don't know if that's driven by market preference or if the bedroom limit has anything to do with it. But anyway, that's all just sort of context for the plan board's consideration. And again, like I can't attribute it to the bedroom limit having that in place, but I know it is something that when we do get new large multifamily development, it is something that they factor into their considerations. And it was something that we put in place primarily to provide a link between that unit count I mentioned and the actual bedrooms in those units. So.
Okay, thank you. Member Ackerman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with Mr. Hawkins that, I vividly remember when we initially put the multiplier in because of the issues that you just mentioned. I don't strenuously object to it going to 3 with a special use permit, but I don't particularly think we need to really increase it. So I guess the basis for this, I would be opposed to increase the multiplier, but I'm certainly opposed to option number 2.
Thank you.
Any?
Yeah, I'd say I'm in the same boat, either leaving it as is or increasing it to 3, but not getting rid of it altogether.
Yes.
Oh, okay, so now we need to move to public comment, and I have a card from Robert Bounce. Sorry.
Thank you again, Robert Mance. At the end of the June 1st workshop at Beaudele Plaza, and we have to remember this is all part of a package that was presented to you. Mr. Persons acknowledged in response to a question that the only real limit was the bedroom limit. And theoretically, in a quadruplex, if each one had 3 bedrooms, that meant you could have 12 unrelated people there. It's a dormitory. So definitely on behalf of the University Park Neighborhood Association that has struggled with these overcrowded places for many, many years and trying manfully to enforce the 3 unrelated persons rule, which now you say is unenforceable. This is a nightmare for them. And I would hate to see it increased. I'm glad 2 of you said you would not like to see it increased, at least beyond the 3. I don't quite understand the multiplier, how it works. But if the bedroom limit is the only limit, that is our real fear. And I will point to a case about 5 years ago. We're on Northwest 8th Avenue at 20th Street. 2 6-bedroom, 4-bath structures were built on a lot with a common fence and a common driveway right behind one of our former board members, a law professor, who brought it to our attention, UPNA. We complained, Harvey Budd was on the commission at the time, and he complained, but nothing was done about that, and it should never have been approved. in a single-family neighborhood, which it was and is. And that's shocking. So please follow Mr. Hawkins' lead on this one and deny it outright. I would say deny it outright. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dennis Silva. Yeah, I appreciate the limit on the bedrooms. I have a question though, maybe Mr. Castillo or Mr. Persons will remember. Adrian Hayes Santos said, you know, the way he said he was going to vote was to remove, it was either the occupancy limit, which I can understand, or this item, that he wanted to remove the bedroom limit altogether. I don't know if y'all remember which one that he said he wanted to remove. So, I mean, I hope it's not a moot point when it goes back to the hearing at the commission. And as Mr. Hawkins says, it's, you know, it's these multiple bedroom, bathroom suites are very inflexible for future use. And they're also, you know, they're geared to students, really. And I just wanted to, you know, the corporate ownership, I'm glad to hear that the bedrooms, you know, have become more, you know, in keeping with, you know, 3 or 4 bedrooms per unit. And I hope it keeps going that way. But the corporate ownership is changing everything. This is really coming on strong under the current market conditions, and that's a real worry that you know, if you loosen up some of the restrictions, then the corporate ownership is going to just continue to build stuff for profit, for, you know, passive investment income of developers. I have a question about well, first I want to say that the University of Florida is, in its strategic plan, it is reducing its enrollment as much as 10,000 in the next few years. The population figures that have been used by the commission are very inflated and not, you know, current. The population growth rate in the United States has plummeted to less than 10% of what the growth rate was 30 years ago. And that's a trend that's worldwide. Fertility is down, and aging populations are dying off. So I think a lot of the concerns about, oh, we're growing. I heard a misstatement the other day from a commissioner that, oh, we have 6,000 more people in the area in the past year, and we've got to keep building. Actually, no, that they're using figures from the metropolitan statistical area, which is Alachua and Gilchrist counties. They're not sticking with current, very precise data about the city. So that should alleviate some, you know, of the hype about, you know, oh, we're growing, we have to just keep building. No, you need to take care of what's already here. But I do have a question about how come is the University of Florida context area, I'm sorry, I'm out of town. I don't understand how that has anything to do with land use, zoning, and comprehensive plan documents that the city, because the university is the entity that designates its context zone. And if they move it around, and already now there's this huge plume that goes all the way across I-75 that didn't used to be there.
Thank you.
If they change their context zone, then that changes the zoning that's within it. So I don't really understand.
Thank you. Is there any other comment on this item?
I looked up bedrooms. Yes, I looked up bedrooms, and HUD allows 2 people per bedroom with like 100 foot, 50 square feet per person. So, and then they do require some living space, and the international management of property, whatever's there, International Property Maintenance Code also sets some limits based on living space. I don't think any of this really stops things being crowded. So I don't know why we can't limit bedrooms for a unit. I mean, I could have 20 bedrooms, 30 bedrooms if I had enough space. I mean, it just doesn't seem to make any sense to me that I could buy a big piece of land and put one big structure, and I could put in lots of bedrooms, pay 96 or 200 people, and I could say this will fit these requirements. Could it not? So I don't quite see where we have any standards whatsoever. So you can have 4 units with 10 or 20 bedrooms in each, if they're huge, on a big acreage. So then you've got an apartment building, basically. So it's just beyond me to understand where the standards even hold to anything. We seem to be like a bucket with water with holes in it. And the way votes are going, for me as a person, is frustrating, to say the least. So I think many of us feel exactly the same way. So thank you.
Thank you. Bringing it back to the board for discussion or a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that in regard to petition LD 22-000043 TCH, that we leave the zoning district multiplier at 2.75. In other words, that we don't change it at all.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Okay, that motion passes 3-1. Can you please read the next item into the record?
Mr. Castillo.
Sorry, that was, I have to hand it to you, that was pretty funny. Item number 211231, petition LD 22-000044 TCH, City of Gainesville requests to amend the City of Gainesville Land Development Code to revise the development compatibility standards in section 30-4.8. And I will be doing that presentation. Maybe. For the record, my name is Juan Castillo. I am planner with the Department of Sustainable Development. Oh, I have to share my screen.
Yeah. Not just I want to see my shiny head.
Okay. All right, and the petition before you is a request to amend the language within our land development code to amend development compatibility standards based on the suggestions from the HRNA report. And the idea behind this request is to allow for flexibility for development in order to eliminate regulations that may seem onerous and would affect the costs of development, basically make development more costly. And so by some of the recommendation is by removing the compatibility standards that we'll be discussing today will help development pricing to make them hopefully more affordable. So the proposal before you today primarily revolves around two main points. A lot of the amendments that you see before you are just clarifications and incorporating the neighborhood residential language within this proposal. But one of the main regulations being amended, or at least being proposed to be amended, is the zero setback allowance. So currently, in order for a development to have zero setback, if the zoning allows, they would have to be abutting a property within a district that currently allows the same setback. And so the proposal is to eliminate that language so that development, if it is within a zoning that allows zero setbacks, would allow to be developed with zero setbacks, regardless of what they're abutting. And the second regulation that's primarily being amended is the requirement of a masonry wall between single-family residential development and multifamily development. And this is also in within the context of small-scale multifamily, where we are trying to make sure that small-scale multifamily is consistent with a neighborhood that's primarily single-family, and so masonry walls are normally not found within houses or dividing houses. That would seem inconsistent, and furthermore, a masonry wall would add a different layer of costs to small-scale multifamily development. And so that is another one of the amendment requests before you today. And with that said, this concludes that presentation, and I am available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Does anyone up here have any questions for staff? If not, we can go ahead and open it up to public comment on this item, if there's anyone here who would like to comment on this.
That's left over from the previous one.
Tana Silva, it's more of a question. Does this have the 60-foot, adjacent to like a single-story or residential area? Does this have the, it changes the 3-story, okay, Andrew's shaking his head no. Okay, I don't know where I saw that the change was going to be from, having 3 stories and then set back to higher stories to just straight up 60 feet right beside like a 1-story building.
In the very beginning of this,
That's gone.
But that's not.
Okay, and this, the first page of this had also the historic preservation standards. That's the first point on the first page of this presentation.
Right, we're not amending historical.
Okay, so that's just irrelevant.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Again, I don't see how if you have a nice single-family area and you have setbacks and you have houses from the street, that removing setbacks makes it compatible. What you've done is you've used the word compatible and destroyed it. So I don't see that a zero setback is in any way compatible with a single-family neighborhood in any way, shape, or form. And 3 stories, we've already gone to 2 for a slightly different structure, which I think most of them, probably both of them, should be 2. So that will reduce the footprint a little bit, so it'll be smaller development. I know up is cheaper, but I'd like to see some kind of consistency. So I'd like to see 2 stories, and I'd like to see setbacks that are compatible with the existing neighborhoods, because otherwise, in your face, you've destroyed neighborhoods by not being incompatible, not compatible. So, and I do think that people who want affordable housing would appreciate a yard. They would appreciate some space around them. And what we're doing is we're building structures that someone's going to build and say, well, they're affordable somewhat, that literally there's nothing in there. There's no yard, no trees. There's nothing for somebody that will have a family. So we ended up building things that are basically for students, for temporary housing. So I would like to consider that we need to have standards that fit those of a nice family, not for students. So 0 setbacks are really in your face, especially in a neighborhood like mine or many of the others. It's just like a sore thumb. And I'd like to put all your names on all of them when they get built. So I think this is not going to be the end of it for any of you. I have to say that. For those of us that have such love for this city, to see it destroyed, and I know it's not your fault because the city commission's pushing it through, but it'd be nice if someone would say, no, 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 hell no. Somebody needs to put it forward and say this place is being destroyed. I mean, just drive around. High-rises everywhere. And transit zones, by the way, are like very, very high story. I looked at them, they were like U4 to whatever, downtown. So you say transit zone, but actually these multiple high-rises. So, and I'm preaching to the, I don't know, whatever. I'm just so frustrated, and I think many of us are. We're not even here anymore. I'm not going to give up, but we have to find other tacks and approaches to deal with this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. Well, I'm having trouble reading the small print here, but in general, when I was talking about the setbacks earlier, they're too close to the house. And back when I was an undergraduate and I took psychology classes, it said crowding.
Excuse me, sorry, would y'all mind please taking that outside?
Jen.
Thank you.
I don't know what you said.
You're good, you can continue.
Okay. So when I took psychology classes, we learned when rats were overcrowded that they started going crazy and developing abnormal behaviors. And so it was thought back in the day that moving to an area with more green space around the properties, a bigger front yard, a bigger backyard, side yards, would help people have a healthy relationship with their neighbors, not overcrowding. Children could play in a green space. But by minimizing the setbacks, the children will have to play in the street again. There won't be a good backyard. People are going to get more angry with their neighbors because they're taking their parking places. And I do think we need to have setbacks so people can have a more space. And this is not doing it. This is going the opposite way, to have small setbacks and leading to overcrowding and undesirable behaviors. In fact, they used to say the neighborhoods that were slum and blighted, such as Pleasant Street and Fifth Avenue, the houses were too close to the street, too small the backyards, too close to each other. They said that's slum and blighted. We want to have better open space, and the neighbors can have more compatibility because each person had a place to park their car. The children can play in their own yard. And now you're going the reverse and saying, let's have buildings closer together and more crowding and no place for children. And we're talking about multifamily. They keep using that word family. And yet a lot of these places are going to be, when they're multifamily, they're going to actually be for rentals and students and people without children. So I'm not a fan of reducing setbacks.
Thank you. Okay. Bringing it back to the board for a motion or discussion. Member Hawkins?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a question for Mr. Castillo. I'm looking at the language on page 6 of the backup, and it's got two differences from this, and I just want to make sure if we vote on the staff recommendation, the two changes are in our backup, the table, the words 3 stories and 36 feet are stricken, and in paragraph D1, the words single family are stricken, but the words neighborhood residential weren't inserted. Is the recommendation, is it for the PowerPoint or is it for the this guy?
PowerPoint, yes.
Cool.
Sorry. That probably was an image from the older stuff, so I apologize for that. But yeah, the
Recommendation would be for the PowerPoints, and there wouldn't be the 3 stories and 36 feet would not be stricken, and the neighborhood residential language would be inserted.
Thank you very much. I have 2 ideas that I would like to share with the board. One, this made sense when we were paired with the staff recommendation to just have the neighborhood residential future land use designation and zoning designation. We made the decision earlier this month to recommend to the commission to create new categories. So I'm comfortable with all the policy changes here, like, right, masonry walls, right, doesn't make any sense. But I think that wherever we have the language neighborhood residential zoning here, we should change something. We should change the words to match our motion the other week, right? Because we're talking about adding neighborhood residential, not just having neighborhood residential. So what I think we should change it to is, instead of neighborhood residential zoning district, we should say single family residential low density or neighborhood residential future land use designation, which are the three low density or single family residential categories that would be in the comp plan if the commission adopts their earlier recommendation. So that's my one suggested change. And then the other one is, I was giving Mr. Persons a hard time earlier, and he was very diplomatic about it. But the language with the 6 units per building, that I think should mean 6 units per building as like a normal understanding of that term, not 6 units within a 100-unit building, is in this paragraph. So the paragraph D1, where it says multifamily development shall contain no more than 6 units per building, I think we should add the same language that Mr. Persons suggested on the other item. We should just take the words within the exterior walls and stick them after the word units. So it's 6 units within the exterior walls per building. So those are the 2 changes that I'm making. I wrote a motion out so it would be a little more clear for Mr. Castillo. But I want to hear if y'all think those are good ideas before I get there.
Why don't you make the motion?
Yeah, all right. Well, that's an invitation. I don't see anybody saying no. So my motion is that we approve petition LD-44TCH with 2 changes. 1, throughout, change every reference in the revised language from neighborhood residential zoning district to single family residential low density or neighborhood residential future land use designation. 2, in paragraph D1, insert the words within exterior walls after the words 6 dwelling units. And I'll email that to you for convenience, Mr. Castillo, if it passes.
Is there? All right, all those, someone wants to comment on the motion?
No.
Is that a
Already
thing?
closed the hearing.
Okay. Believe we've already closed public comment.
Except for the proposition was not on the floor when they commented. And because Commissioner Hawkins just made some changes, I'd like to speak to that, please. Thank you. I suggest when you make changes like this, and when you've got 2 different documents, I really think that the item should come back in its finished form for you to approve. I don't think it's good process to sit up here and have a document. He asked what was being approved. It's this. Commissioner or Member Hawkins made a suggestion, asked the language to be changed. I sincerely believe that you ought to have that come back to you and know exactly what's going to be approved, and so the public can know exactly what's being approved. I've seen things happen, and you got, not you, City Commission, you have fuzzy motions, and I think the proper way to do this, and you all seem to act more properly, and so I would make that request that somehow you ask for this to be brought back. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Ackerman?
Madam Chair, because we're advisory to the City Commission, this will go in its final form to the City Commission, and is normally how we do it. We don't normally make changes to things and then defer them to a following meeting. They go on to the City Commission, and the staff puts it into its final form, and it's presented to the City Commission, which is the final say on all of this.
Okay, thank you.
We also don't normally have comments on motions after the public hearing is closed. That's a City Commission thing.
Thank you. So I think we'll move to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
That motion passes unanimously. Can you please read the last item into the record?
Item number 211233, petition LD 22-000045 TCH, City of Gainesville requests to amend the City of Gainesville Land Development Code to update lot split and minor subdivision standards. And I will be making that presentation shortly. That's one there, but okay. So, for the record, my name is Juan Castillo, planner for the Department of Sustainable Development. Presenting item number LD 22-000045 TCH. The request is to amend the language for currently within the Land Development Code, updating the language for lot splits and minor subdivision. As you will see, the request is really not proposing anything major. A lot of the language that's being recommended for amendment is to clarify a lot of the intent of lot split, the current lot split regulations. There's just been some confusion in that has been identified that with this amendment, staff has taken the initiation to clarify, such as what you see here on your screen. One thing I will highlight that is an amendment that would change fairly how we do lot splits and minor subdivisions is number C, or letter C that's before you. And basically, as our language reads today, lot splits cannot be taken if they require any street, sidewalk, bikeway, etc., or any other improvement. So they would have to demonstrate that those improvements are ready and available before the lot split or minor subdivision is taken. The language that's being proposed is recognizing that the facilities are needed, but referring those facilities to the time of development. So the lot split or minor subdivision would occur, and if there is some facilities needed, there would be allowances within the minor subdivision or the lot split that would excuse me, that would create the space in order for those the addition of those facilities to occur, such as any easements or any provisions clearly written out within the minor or the lot split. So that's currently what the language is being proposed. The rest of the languages, again, is just it's meant to clarify the existing language. So things like removing things like this chapter to clarify that we're referring to the Land Development Code and associated zoning districts. Clarifying, for example, in I-2, it's lots created pursuant to the section that are served by well or septic tank must connect to city water or sewer at the property's owner's sole expense. Highlighting the fact that a pre-application meeting with staff is required. Again, just language to clarify a lot of what's already here. And here we're removing language that basically seems redundant. So we're removing the language that says the required streets or paths should be constructed at the expense of the applicant according to the appropriate city standards as determined through the minor subdivision process, but may be cited and configured in a manner so that the streets provide the most appropriate access to the minor subdivision, and that's already taken into account with the language that's existing, and we're just providing language that clarifies that you need to provide a sub-app. So with that, I will conclude my presentation and I'm here and available for any questions that you may have.
The previous slide, was that supposed to say stub out?
Stub out, yes.
Because it says sub out. Either that or I just can't see it.
Thank you. Does anyone have any other questions on the board for staff? Okay. Are there any folks in the public who would like to comment?
One last time, Tana Silva. I'm glad to see the recommendation or the change to make sure that the property owner is going to be responsible for paying for septic tank connections to the sewer. The interim GRU general manager said that those are $20,000 to $50,000 a piece to connect up, and that's a huge cost. All of South Main, I think Mr. Persons told me years ago that basically all of South Main is on septic, different neighborhoods and so forth. So I sure wouldn't want to see the city taxpayers have to pick up the tab for all those connections. And I just want to say thank you to all of y'all for taking the time to go through these details in a responsible manner. And I'm very, very sorry that the commission has turned out the way that it has. It began in 2016 with an upheaval of city governance that was so unwise. It was so radical at just one meeting with the outgoing mayor doing away with standing committees and a new novice city manager bringing in ridiculous changes to the governance of the city. And this is where we are now, 6 years of this, of pushing the public and the advisory boards out of self-governance in a democratic fashion. And I really appreciate all of you who have stuck with it and still tried to get your voices heard and get your recommendations heard. The city commission has spent more time on regulating shopping cart braking mechanisms than it has on these details that are going to be consequential for the entire city's future. And another one was getting liquor stores to sell produce. This is the stuff they're wasting people's time and money and resources on, and it's horrible. And there's been for these recommendations, all of these ordinances, there's been a concerted, aggressive campaign to keep the public from having any input into any of this. I mean, over and over again, just not announcing meetings, workshops. Anyway, it's very sad. And if something doesn't change pretty fast, then I'm very worried about the future of the city. And I really appreciate all of your commitment to trying to, have different perspectives brought into the policy making. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments, we can bring it back to the board for discussion or motion.
Be brave. Be brave.
I move the city plan board recommend the city commission adopt petition LD 2245 TCH.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Seeing no information items, we can move to member comment. If there's any member comment today.
I just have one. We need to keep in mind that students are human beings. They're people. They're entitled to decent places to live. We're a college town. We have lots of them. The idea that we're just going to treat them like throwaways, I think, is a very bad bit of progress. Thank you.
Yeah, it's odd to me that people sort of think that families wouldn't want to live in a townhouse. Like me, I own a single family house. I hate my yard, and I'm always looking for a townhouse, honestly. And, you know, after these townhouses built south of Maine, the historic district have changed rules that stuff like that couldn't be built near historic districts. I mean, I would personally, I've been looking for a townhouse, and the whole idea that families, I have 3 kids, and we wouldn't be happy there with walking distance to Roper Park, walking distance to the downtown library. Get out of here. Like that, that's just ridiculous to me.
Well, I, on the other hand, when I don't live near students now, but it was not conducive for my family. Their lifestyle and my lifestyle when I was a young professional did not agree, and partying and, you know, during football season, I didn't want that. And I chose where I lived because I didn't want to live around students. I didn't want to have to be at odds and go over to ask my neighbors to turn their music down and to not block us in and to pick up their beer cans. It's not that I thought they were horrible people. I just didn't want to live around that. So I chose not to. So I kind of get where people don't want there to be an influx of people that are at different phases of their life. Like the people that are the students now that may have that lifestyle, as they age, they'll probably grow out of it and won't want to be around it either. So I just think we have to make sure that folks are living in compatible settings where, you know, there's not this pull and all of what one person may find desirable and not have an issue with, and what someone else. And like I said, when I chose my place of, you know, we first got married, we chose it where we did. We wanted to be close to downtown because I worked downtown at the time, but I did not want to have to deal with the riotous living of college students. I was beyond that, and I didn't want that. And that doesn't make me a bad person for not wanting that. It doesn't make them a bad people for living that way. It's just we were at 2 different places in our lives, and we had 2 different focuses, I guess, or 2 different desires. So, but I think we have to be careful and I'm not even a voting member, so I don't know, I'm saying we, but y'all have to be careful in making a recommendation to the commission and the commission approving things and where the students are going to reside, because you kind of get that pull. That's what we have in University Park over there, right? The folks coming over there, you know, and then they start to come in and they start to displace the other people. So I know we do need housing, but we can't. I think also for our city is there's more to our city than the University of Florida. And folks say what they bring in, but we don't always count up the cost of what they extract out. Because they extract out a lot and they're not putting a lot in. They get, you know, they employ people, but then they also have a real large underclass of people that earn low-wage jobs or OPS and get no benefits. And then they're strained on city fire. They don't pay a fire fee. You know, I mean, there's stuff, so I won't get on that. So, I mean, I'm not to begrudge that. They're a partner in our community, but they also have to take some responsibility and not just extract out because they're a governmental agency, because when they extract out and they don't put anything in the pot, that's more for the people that are paying have to pay more. So that's my 2 cents. And it's late, I'm ready to go.
I totally agree with it.
Cheers.
That's a hard agreement, as Thomas said.
So the next meeting is July 28th, and with that, this meeting is adjourned.
Good job.